Sex is something that, yes, me and my friends have experienced and experimented with.
I want to have sex.
I'm not gonna be interested in that person. I'm just like attracted to their body or stuff.
Most everybody in high school is having sex before they're married.
You know, I think it's real easy sometimes to look at life like it's just this great ride, or it's just this awesome game and you're out to have as much fun as you can.
You see so much and hear so much about sex almost everywhere you go.
I've heard a lot about condoms and AIDS and birth control pills.
That type of thing all over the news, all over magazines.
Condoms are a good message, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna have sex anyway, why not use a condom?
If I go out with somebody, it's not like, you know, I'm not gonna be interested in that person. I'm just like attracted to their body or stuff. And that's what I want right now.
But then every place you go, every movie you see, everywhere, it promotes sex.
Let me tell you what sex is, because a lot of y'all not saying something because either you're really not sure what it is, or you're embarrassed to say what you think it is. If I had a rose in here and I passed the rose around, each one of you took a rose petal off, for one, it would never make it to the back. But the rose wouldn't be anything left. And what happens is when you sleep with somebody, you give a part of yourself away. You give it away. And when you as teenagers go, well, I'm gonna sleep with this guy or this girl, and you keep doing it, you're just giving your heart away. And by the time you get to college, or by the time you're a senior, you don't even care about yourself because you have nothing to care about. And you say, well, I might as well just do it because it doesn't matter. It does matter because you are a real person. Love desires to please someone else at the expense of self because love wants to give. But lust wants to please self at the expense of somebody else because lust wants to get.
There's not only the risk of teenage pregnancy or the risk of disease, but there's the risk of a broken heart. And there just isn't any protection that can protect you from a broken heart.
You know, some people say, well, you know, if you just use a condom, you'll be protected from sickness and death. Well, that's a false sense of security for this reason. Condoms fail 15% of the time when attempting to prevent pregnancy, although a woman can only get pregnant a few days a month. But you can contract a disease 31 days a month. How high do you think the condom failure rate is in preventing diseases that you can get 365 days a year? See, just one slippage, one breakage, one failure to wear the thing properly, and you're nailed. Right now, according to the United States Centers for Disease Control, 43 million Americans have an incurable sexually transmitted virus. They'll suffer from it for the rest of their lives, and some are going to die of it. That's 1 in 5, and the number is rising every year.
One thing that we're not told is that one attack of chlamydia, one case of chlamydia, gives you a 30% greater chance of having infertility. So you can't afford to experiment. We're seeing so many more women flocking to the infertility doctors and suffering the consequences of a sexually transmitted disease that they thought they had cured years earlier. But the scars are still there, both emotionally and in their bodies.
Do you know there's not one orgasm in this world that's worth dying for?
A young life is far too great to throw away on one sexual experience or a high or whatever. I mean, it's far too great. The safe sex condom campaign is simply a matter of continuing in promiscuity.
The way I felt with being alone and dumped and 15 and pregnant, to me it wasn't important to worry about him leaving me. It was important to take care of my child and to think of what I'm going to do for my life and the future of my child's life.
When I got pregnant, I had dated this guy for a year and a half. I thought, of course he'll marry me. You know, we're in love. We've dated a year and a half. He took off.
Knowing that I'm not going to live to see the fulfillment of the hopes and the dreams that I've had is pretty hard to take.
What a tragedy that is, and it's all so unnecessary. You've probably heard it said that we're all at risk for AIDS and that anyone can contract HIV. See, that's simply not true. There's an effort out there today to make it appear that everyone is equally likely to come down with this disease. But there are certain behaviors that spread HIV, primarily vaginal and anal intercourse and the sharing of dirty needles and drug abuse. Now, if you avoid those behaviors and you remain sexually abstinent before marriage, and then you marry an uninfected person and you stay faithful for life, you can reduce the risk of AIDS to almost zero. You see, abstinence, which is a choice, it's a choice to refrain from sexual activity, is in fact the only truly protected sex.
After all the diseases that are out there, all the pregnancy, the risk of broken heart, the risk of guilt, depression, the risk of a bad reputation, is it worth the risk?
Not really. It's not worth the risk. Too many negatives.
You know, a lot of our friends will talk to us now, and they're not married, they're single, and they'll say, oh, it's easy for you because you're married, but...
Right, you guys don't have to worry about
Right.
these kinds of things. But you have to remember, too, that it wasn't long ago that I was in high school, that Chelsea was in high school, and we're making the same decisions
We've only been married a year.
that they're making now, and man, am I glad I did.
Even in the area of sex, if you feel like, oh, well, this doesn't, you know, I've already made a bad decision about that, and so, you know, I guess I just have to take my risks. You don't have to.
The terminology that's used today of secondary virginity applies to me because at that point I realized that just having sex did not make me a man.
I believe very strongly that people can start all over again. I don't believe that you can erase some of the scars that happened from, for example, losing your virginity as I did.
There's really nothing wrong with not having sex, and I just felt free of all the pressures, and it's a lot easier for me to go through life knowing that I don't have to do anything that anybody else tells me to. I have, I think, a great self-image, and I'm fine with the way I am.
A lot of girls would say no if they just knew how to say no in a way that guys could respect and in a way that guys would understand. I remain abstinent and plan to keep my virginity until I get married so that when I get to the altar, I can wear a white dress and mean it, number one. And number two, I could say to my husband, I loved you before I ever knew you, and I saved myself just for you.
Love is not having to have sex. Love is not jumping into bed.
I'm glad that we waited. I'm very glad that we waited. There's an element of trust there that he's mine, and he's not with anybody else.
I want to save myself for my wife because that's what I believe. And I just, you know, it has nothing to do with being a television star. It's about respecting yourself and loving yourself enough and wanting to love the person that you know later on in life, God willing, that I find. I've always been taught that you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. You know, if you're hanging with friends that are sleeping around and doing things that they haven't been doing, sneaking out the house to be with their girlfriends or their boyfriends late at night, then sooner or later you're going to be influenced.
I'm glad I waited because, you know, as far as you hear the lines are from a lot of people saying, well, you know, we've got to experiment and, you know, find out if we're compatible sexually. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite compatible with my wife, and we've got a great sex life. And I can't imagine you not being compatible if you're with someone that you're supposed to be with for the rest of your life.
God has given us a body that is a temple for the Holy Spirit. God expects us to keep that body pure. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take discipline. And God wants us to keep pure for our husband and wife.
To me, God knows best. God created all of us. He knows best, and he knows what's best for our life. And I don't mind following my life after him and just saying, go ahead, God. Sure, I won't have sex until the time that you said you created it to be inside of marriage. Okay, I'll wait for that time. If I can do it in the NBA, facing the challenges that I face, I know you can do it where you are.
God created sex, and it's a very natural feeling, a very natural thing, and it was intended to be something incredible and something special and something without boundaries with your husband.
There's more to sex than just, you know, the pleasure and the fun, because when you have sex with somebody, you're giving yourself to them. You're giving something to them you can't get back, no matter how much you want it back. And I think you should just save it for somebody you really care about, who cares about you, and that you can trust with what you're giving them, because you're never going to be able to get it back.
And who's the one and only person that could be?
I guess your husband.
And that is the kind of love and sex that is fun and exciting and lasts a lifetime.
It all comes down to each individual making the right choice.